That's low, Maddie. I did everything to support our home.
Do you seriously think I need that military money?
Ari Cole sat in the passenger seat of the military jeep, staring silently into the distance. Outside, the familiar landscapes of central Texas slid by. Diego Morales, his fellow soldier, drove carefully, stealing glances at his friend. They were heading back from the base at Fort Cavazos after a long rotation. There were only a few miles left to Ari's home. Home at last, Diego broke the quiet, a smile tugging at one corner of his mouth. How long were you deployed again? 9 months? Almost 10, Ari nodded, eyes fixed on the road. He rubbed the scar on his right palm with his fingers, a reminder of a recent demining operation, when a fragment from a mine cut his hand. The physical pain had faded, but the tension inside would not let up. Ari kept thinking about his wife and son he had not seen for so long. Maddie and their 5-year-old Noah were waiting in their house on the edge of Killeen. At least, he hoped they were waiting. "How's Maddie?" Diego asked, keeping his gaze ahead. "She'll be happy, I bet." "We'll see," Ari answered softly. A week earlier, he and Maddie had spoken briefly on the phone. She reacted coolly to the news of his return. She only said she would be waiting, then hung up. No words of love or excitement. Over these months, their conversations had grown rare and chilly. He blamed himself. The service had always stood between them. Diego pulled the jeep to a stop in front of a low, yellow brick house. A dim light glowed on the porch. Ari's heart began to hammer. He took a deep breath to steady himself and opened the door. At the front door, he slid the key into the lock. But the door opened before he could turn it. Maddie stood in the doorway. She had her hand on the knob from the inside, as if she had been listening for his steps. "Hi," Ari said hoarsely, swallowing the lump in his throat. He moved to hug his wife, but Maddie did not budge. "You're here," was all she said. Her voice was even, with no joy in it. "I told you I was coming." Ari tried to smile, letting his hands fall. She did not even shake his hand. "Is Noah asleep?" "He's asleep." Maddie stepped back to let him in. "It's already late." Ari stepped into the entryway and set his heavy duffel down by the wall. The house smelled of something unfamiliar, a faint trace of men's cologne mingled with the soft scent of homemade stew wafting from the kitchen. Ari frowned without meaning to. In the living room, he noticed 2 empty coffee cups on the coffee table. "Two? Did someone stop by?" he asked, nodding at the cups, trying to keep his tone casual. "Do not scroll. The best part is coming up. Subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment." Yes, the neighbor, Susan," Maddie said after the slightest pause. "She was waiting with me for you, then left." Ari only nodded, though skepticism tightened inside him. They had never been close to that neighbor. Why would she be waiting for him? "You must be hungry." Maddie hurried to change the subject. "I saved you dinner." She practically fled to the kitchen. Ari followed. Maddie pulled a ceramic pot from the oven. The smell of braised meat with garlic and herbs filled the room. He used to love her stew. Now he barely felt hunger, only strain. "Sit, I'll serve you," she muttered, avoiding his eyes. Ari sat at the table. Maddie set a plate in front of him, but stayed standing herself. He began to eat in silence. Each bite felt heavy, he had no appetite. She leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. Her gaze drifted across the ceiling, anywhere but him. The silence dragged on, heavy and oppressive. At last Ari could not stand it. "How have you been? How's Noah?" "Fine," Maddie answered curtly. "Noah's growing, asks about you. You'll be with him for a while now, that's good." "Yeah, good," he nodded, swallowing the last tasteless mouthful. He wanted to ask something else, but did not know where to begin. The woman before him felt almost like a stranger, not the loving wife he remembered from previous homecomings. Ari rose from the table. "Thank you. It was good." "Leave it, I'll clean up," she tossed over her shoulder. She gathered his plate and carried it to the sink. Ari stood a few seconds, watching her hurried movements. Maddie's distance cut him to the quick. "Maddie," he began quietly, but she cut him off. "It's late, Ari." You should rest after the road. You can sleep in the living room. The living room? Ari's heart dropped. The living room, he repeated. Maddie turned, forcing a hard smile. Our bedroom's a mess, and Noah could wake up. Take the couch, okay? Ari clenched his teeth to hold back a surge of hurt. She nodded in relief and quickly left the kitchen without even looking at him. He felt anger boil in his chest, mixed with despair. He peeked into Noah's room. His son was asleep, hugging a teddy bear tight. Ari's heart thawed a little at the sight. At least someone was glad he was home. Whispering a wish for Noah to sleep well, he pulled the door mostly closed. Maddie had already disappeared into the bedroom. Ari walked quietly to the door of what had once been their shared room. He knocked softly. Maddie, we'll talk tomorrow, all right? Silence from inside. Then a short, all right. He wanted to say that he loved her, that he had missed her. But he could not force those words toward a cold, closed door. Ari went to the living room. He spread a blanket he found in the closet over the couch. The 2 cups on the table caught his eye again. He lifted one and sniffed a few cold drops of coffee mixed in the bottom. The neighbor or a lover? Suddenly, the bedroom lock clicked quietly. He stiffened. Maddie had locked the door from the inside. The realization pierced him like an icicle. Ari sank onto the couch, trying to breathe evenly. His head swam with jealousy and suspicion. He wanted to be wrong, but every sign pointed to this. While he risked his life overseas, another man had appeared in his home. Calm down, he ordered himself. Do not jump to conclusions. But it was too late. That night on the couch felt longer than all the months he had spent in the sands of a foreign land. Ari lay staring at the ceiling, unable to close his eyes. Beyond the wall, his wife's silence was quiet and distant. He turned his head and looked down the dark hallway toward Noah's door. For Noah's sake, for him, I have to keep my cool. In the morning, Ari woke to the patter of small feet in the hallway. Opening his eyes, he saw Noah's joyful face. The boy was already dressed for daycare in jeans and a Spider-Man t-shirt. Daddy, Noah squeaked, and unable to hold back his joy, jumped onto his father's chest. Ari grunted in surprise and then burst out laughing, squeezing his son tight. Hey, champ, he whispered, combing his fingers through the boy's soft hair. His heart was about to leap out of his chest with happiness. I missed you so much, Noah. I missed you too, Daddy. The boy hugged his neck with all his little strength. You're not going away again, are you? Ari swallowed the lump in his throat. No, buddy, I'm here now, he said, though a bitter doubt about that word, here, tugged at him. Look how you've grown. Wow, those muscles. He squeezed Noah's arm playfully, and the boy giggled. Maddie stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them hug. For a moment, Ari thought he saw a warm spark flicker in her eyes. But when he looked again, her face was the same cold mask. Noah, let Daddy get up, she said dryly. It's time to go. You don't want to be late. Reluctantly, the boy let go. Ari got up from the couch where he had fallen asleep the night before. His back ached. I'll drive him, he offered at once, eager to spend more time with his son. No need, Maddie replied. You probably need to swing by the base, check in after deployment. I have the day off, Ari said, searching her eyes. I can go with you. I'd like to see where Noah goes every morning. Maddie took Noah's little backpack from the hook and straightened his collar. Fine, she agreed unexpectedly after a pause. If you want. Ari tensed at the change in her tone, but said nothing. He washed up quickly, and within minutes he was in the passenger seat of the family SUV beside Maddie. Noah sang in the back seat, clutching his favorite toy car. On the drive, Ari threw careful glances at his wife. She focused on the road and said nothing. Even at daycare, when saying goodbye, she just pecked Noah on the cheek and said tightly, Daddy will pick you up tonight. The boy ran off to his friends, and Maddie immediately turned for the exit. Maybe we grab a coffee, Ari suggested once they were back in the car. We need to talk, Maddie. Her shoulders moved, but she did not look at him. Talk. Not here, he sighed. Talking about personal things in a parked car outside a daycare felt like a bad idea. At home, calmly, Maddie pressed the gas without a word. The ride back took 10 minutes that felt like forever. As soon as they crossed the threshold, Ari took off his cap and set it on the console table. His heart pounded in his throat. The moment of truth had come. Maddie walked into the kitchen and leaned her hip against the table, arms folded across her chest. "What do you want to say?" Ari approached slowly, stopping a few steps away to keep from feeling threatening. "I want to know what's going on," he began, firm but trying to stay calm. "Last night you acted strange. You're avoiding me. You locked the door against me, Maddie." "So what?" Her eyes flared with defiance. "I had every right. I just wanted to sleep without your snoring." She was lying, and he knew it. Ari clenched his hands, fighting for control. "That's not the point. You know what I mean. Who is the man?" Maddie snapped around toward the counter, as if suddenly intent on putting away clean dishes from the rack. "What man?" "The one who was here last night," Ari said, not taking his eyes off her. "Someone's been around while I was gone. I smelled a man's cologne. I saw the cups." Maddie slammed a plate down and turned to him. On her face, he saw anger and fear. "You imagined it," she shot back. "No one was here except Susan. You don't trust me? After everything." "After everything," he echoed, feeling hurt ignite in his chest. "Maddie, you're the one who stopped trusting these past months. You barely spoke to me. I come home and you won't even let me into our bedroom. Because you're almost a stranger to me now," she suddenly shouted, her voice cracking through the air like a whip. "Where were you when I was here alone, fighting to keep it all together? Where were you when Noah was sick and crying at night? Where were you when I needed you to just hold me?" Tears sprang to her eyes, but Maddie kept yelling as if she did not notice them. "Your damned army was always more important than your own family. For 10 years, I've been living like a straw in the wind, with a child on my hip, while you play at war." Ari felt her words hit him harder than any punch. He stepped closer, hands raised in plea. "Maddie, listen, I'm not playing. It's my service. I'm an oud tech you knew who you married. I risk my life not for fun, but so you and Noah can live in safety." "In safety?" She laughed bitterly through tears. "Every single day I'm terrified you won't come back at all. Do you get that? Every knock at the door I flinch, thinking it's officers with a death notice. How long can I live in that kind of dread?" Ari had no words. He knew the service was hard on his family, but he thought he was doing the noble thing. "I do it for our country, for your own ambitions," she cut in, venom sharp. "You like it. You cannot live without that adrenaline, and I cannot live like this anymore." She wiped her tears, and her face hardened, flat and cold. "War matters more to you than we do. Fine, Ari, stay with your war. We'll make a life without you." Ice filled his chest. "What are you saying?" he whispered. "Maddie, you can't just—" "Divorce?" She arched an eyebrow. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." Ari's head spun. He had suspected this, but hearing it out loud felt like a blow. "You want a divorce? Because I serve? But I thought this was my last contract. I was planning." Maddie waved him off and stepped in close. Her voice fell to a dangerous hush. "Do not lie, at least not now. You would have stayed until retirement. That's your real family, the army. And me, I'm tired of being a widow with a living husband." "So that's it." Ari shook his head, despair washing over him. "And you decided to find someone else, so you would not be alone?" Maddie's eyes flared. "Found someone else? You're accusing me of cheating after everything?" She jabbed a finger into his chest, closing the distance. "Who betrayed me first, huh? Who left me with a newborn and went off to build a career? Who ran off every time, leaving me to handle everything alone?" Ari stepped back, stunned, but Maddie pressed forward, almost shouting in his face. "You weren't there when I cried from loneliness night after night, or when we buried my mother. You did not even come to the funeral, Ari. Air deserted his lungs. He wanted to shout that he could not get away. He had been on an overseas mission then. But he knew she was right. He had not been there, and he would always bear that. Maddie, he rasped, reaching out to soothe her. I'm so sorry. You know how sorry I am. She shoved his hands off his chest. Do not touch me. Ari staggered, but kept his balance. Anger and pain whirled inside him, but he still held himself in check. Okay, I won't, he exhaled. I get that our marriage is in crisis. But Maddie, let's not do anything rash. We're a family. We can try to fix this, go to counseling. No, Ari, she cut him off. It's too late. I do not want to fix anything anymore. It's over. The words landed cold and clear. Ari went numb. He did not recognize this woman so resolute, almost cruel. Was this really the same Maddie he had once dreamed of building a life with? You really want this, he said quietly. What about Noah? You want to take his father away from him. I'm protecting Noah, she shot back. He needs stability, not a father who shows up once a year and then wrecks his head with the back and forth of coming and going. Do not you dare say I'm a bad father. Ari's voice shook with controlled fury. I love our son. Love him? She snorted in contempt. Then why do you barely know him? Why did you miss his first words, his first steps? Because you weren't here. You chose the uniform and the rifle over me and him. That's low, Maddie, he said, despairing. I did the best I could. I earned for our home, for Noah's future. Noah's future? She laughed through her tears. Are you serious? You think I need that army money? A throbbing pulse pounded in Ari's temples. His anger rose, but he forced it down. You're being unfair. I always sent you money, and in every letter I wrote how much I loved you. You're the one who pulled away more and more. In the last few months, you would not even answer my calls. Because I didn't want to lie that everything was fine, she screamed in his face. Didn't want to say I was waiting for you to come back. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. It was a confession. Ari looked at her, and his chest tightened like a vise. So you really, he could not finish. You have someone, don't you? Maddie glared at him from under her brow, eyes flashing. And suddenly he saw the slightest smile on her lips. What if I do? She asked softly, so full of challenge that Ari's fists trembled. What are you going to do about it, soldier? He froze. A roar filled his temples. His heart thudded like mad. Who is he? Ari managed, rough and dangerous. Maddie watched him, measuring his state. Then she snapped. Brandon. Brandon Gale. He's a real man who can give me what you never did. What? Ari felt darkness creep into his vision. The name hit like an arrow. Brandon Gale, he remembered the local developer who had helped fix their roof last year. They had traded a few words then. Had he really been around his wife all this time? You're sleeping with him? Yes, Maddie spat, with vicious satisfaction. And you know what? He was there when we needed someone most. He came and fixed our roof after the storm ripped it off, because you weren't there. He drove Noah to baseball when your son needed a man's example, and you were on yet another deployment. He held me at night when I cried from loneliness. Each word stabbed into Ari like a knife. He did not notice how he closed the distance. His heart pounded in his ears, his breath turned to a hot growl. Shut up, he hissed through his teeth, losing control. Maddie, stop. Hurts to hear the truth, does it? She goaded him, now deliberately flinging the worst at his face. Brandon is better than you at everything. He's stronger, gentler, more attentive. He takes care of me and Noah. All you know how to do is shout and bark orders. Shut up, Ari yelled, in a voice that did not sound like his own. He grabbed Maddie by the shoulders sharply, almost roughly. He was shaking all over. Maddie cried out not from pain, it seemed, but from a kind of triumphant rage. Gonna hit me? She shrieked, wrenching out of his hands. There he is, the real you, huh? Ari let go instantly, horrified at himself. He had only wanted to stop the torrent of words. He had not meant to hurt her. Maddie rocked back from the momentum but kept her feet. Fury blazed across her face. Her eyes flicked to his right hand, his wedding band still on his ring finger. Hers was long gone, only now did he notice. "Do not touch me," she hissed. Suddenly, Maddie lunged at him, swinging. He swatted her arm away on instinct, pushing her forearm aside to create space. Maddie yelped and fell, catching the corner of the table and going down badly, banging her elbow. From pain or feigned fear, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Help! Somebody help!" Ari went rigid. "What are you doing?" he whispered, not believing his own eyes or ears. Maddie crawled backward across the floor, smearing tears down her cheeks. "Do not touch me," she cried. "Please, do not." He stepped toward her, hand out. "Maddie, stop, I... All at once, she pulled a phone from the pocket of her sweatpants. "Hello, police," she shouted into the receiver, stabbing at the screen. "Help, my husband is beating me. He's going to kill me." Ari froze in place, hands up like he was staring down a barrel. "Are you out of your mind?" he shouted. "Stop, I'm not even touching you." Maddie tossed the phone aside on purpose, but in a way that the call would not disconnect. It slid under the table somewhere. Ari heard the muffled voice of the operator, but could not make out the words. "Help," Maddie wailed, covering her face theatrically with her hands. "He's abusing me." "My God," Ari breathed, backing away. A terrible realization swept over him. She had set this up. "You planned this?" he asked, voice rough as he slowly retreated to make himself look less threatening. "Why, Maddie?" But she kept crying over him, refusing to listen. "I did not want to fight. Please, Ari, no." Sirens wailed outside. A patrol car was near. Ari ran for the front door to meet the police. He flung it wide and, stepping onto the porch, raised his hands high. "I'm unarmed," he shouted as the cruiser screeched to a halt in their driveway. Two officers jumped out with guns drawn. "On the ground, face down," one barked. Ari dropped to his knees, then stretched out on the concrete walkway, hands locked behind his head. He heard his heart pounding. "This is a nightmare," flashed through his mind. The officers wrenched his hands behind his back and snapped cold cuffs onto his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," one began at a quick clip. "She's lying," Ari rasped, turning his head as far as the iron hands on his neck allowed. "I did not hit her. This is a misunderstanding." "Quiet, sir," the other officer said, hauling him upright. "You can explain at the station." From the open doorway came Maddie's sobs. "I'm here. Help." A female officer who had stayed behind ran inside. A moment later, she brought Maddie out to the porch. Ari's wife looked pitiful, hair disheveled, a scrape on her chin, face tear-streaked. She held her elbow and winced. Ari noticed a bluish stripe swelling on her forearm from the table or something she had pinched quickly, he could not tell. Seeing him in cuffs, Maddie sniffled and ducked behind the female officer as if afraid of another attack. "Do not let him go," she pleaded. He's scary." "I did not touch her," Ari shouted, blood flooding his face. "She set this up. Check the phone, she attacked me." The officer's grip on his shoulder tightened. "Easy, sir. We have a call and a victim with visible injuries." "I didn't." Ari choked on a mix of rage and despair. "She's my wife. She made it up." "The court will sort that out," the officer snapped. Ari locked eyes with Maddie. Behind the veil of tears, for one heartbeat, he saw something else. A cold gleam of victory. His breath caught. This was not a fit, this was a plan. "Noah," he whispered. "Think of Noah, Maddie." Her face twitched, but she looked away quickly. "Please take him," she said in a broken voice to the police. "I'm afraid for my child." Ari felt a wave of fury crest over him at those words. He lunged forward, but these officers had seen worse. They pinned him against the hood in an instant. "Relax," the officer barked. "One more move, and we will use force." Ari rasped, held his breath, and went still, his fingers digging into the cold metal of the hood. Moments later, they were tugging him toward the back door of the patrol car. "Maddie, don't do this," he shouted over his shoulder as they pushed him inside. "Please, tell them the truth." The door slammed in his face. He saw Maddie leaning against the door frame, not even looking his way. The female officer tried to seat her on the porch steps and, judging by the radio chatter, called medics. All the sounds drifted far away. The siren, the voices, everything turned muffled, as if Ari were underwater. He sat in the cruiser, belt across his chest, hands shaking with adrenaline. Noah's face filled his mind how happy he had been that morning. "Daddy will pick you up tonight," Maddie had told him. No, Daddy was not picking him up anytime soon. Ari tipped his forehead against the seatback and squeezed his eyes shut in despair. This is a trap. She planned it all. Everything felt absurd. Keep calm, he remembered from training. But calm evaporated every time he saw his wife talking to the police, throwing glances at the car where he sat. "She wants to ruin my life," he understood sharply. "Take my son and destroy everything." The engine roared. The patrol car rolled out of the driveway and onto the street. Ari craned his neck to take one last look at the house. The car picked up speed. Neighbors peered from windows. Some stepped onto porches, watching the cruiser drive away. "The whole town will know now," Ari thought bitterly. War hero Sergeant Cole grabs his wife by the throat. The thought made him shudder. He clenched his jaw so hard it ached. No, it will not be like that. Dim light from a lamp washed the gray visitor's room at the police station. Ari sat at a table, head in his hands. Over the last few hours, they had photographed him, taken prints, and opened a case. Sergeant Ari Cole, 32 years old, arrested on suspicion of domestic violence. It felt unreal. When the officers took off the cuffs and locked him in a holding cell, Ari stared at the scuffed wall and barely kept from screaming. The last minutes at home replayed over and over. Maddie's words, her scream, the cold look as they took him away. The door opened, cutting through his thoughts. Diego Morales walked in, pulling off his cap. A guard remained outside. "Damn, brother," Diego said softly when he saw Ari's state. Ari lifted his head. For a moment shame washed over him, his friend seeing him like this, eyes puffy, a scrape on his face, jail fatigues instead of a uniform. Shame quickly gave way to relief that he was not alone. "Diego." They gripped each other's hands hard, then Diego sighed and sat across from him. "I came as soon as I could. The commander knows what happened." Ari closed his eyes. The commander. Of course the station had notified the military police or the unit. He lived off post, but as a service member he had to report an arrest to his chain of command. "What did they say?" he asked hoarsely. "Nothing specific yet," his friend replied. "Captain Ford ordered us to support you. Told you to hang in there. Right now you're on scheduled leave, so officially you didn't break any rules, but—" Ari nodded. But if he was found guilty of violence, his career was over. Everyone knew it, even if they did not say it out loud. "I talked to one of our JAG lawyers," Diego went on. "They suggested getting a civilian attorney because the case falls under state jurisdiction. There's a sharp one around here, Karen Lee. She's been handling these cases for about 10 years, and she's helped a lot of military folks in similar trouble." "Good," Ari nodded. He felt drained. "Were you able to post bail?" "Yeah," his friend said. 5,000. We had to scrape it together from the guys, but we managed. They're about to release you on bond. However—" "What?" Ari tensed. Diego looked at him with sympathy. "The judge issued a temporary restraining order. You cannot go near Maddie and Noah, at least until the hearing." Ari shut his eyes and cursed under his breath. He had expected it, but it still hurt to hear. "I will not be able to see my son." "Sorry, man," Diego said quietly. "It's standard in cases like this." Ari's fists trembled on the tabletop, sheer helplessness running through him. "She took everything from me in a single moment," he ground out. "My home, my son. Do not think about that right now. We'll fix this, Diego said, laying a careful hand over Ari's. I'm with you. Ari gave him a grateful look. Nothing needed to be said. An hour later, they let him out. The sun was already high, it was noon. Ari stepped from the station, squinting into the bright light. He wore his own jeans and t-shirt that Diego had brought from home. The jail clothes stayed behind. Still, he felt dirty inside. In the parking lot, a poised, Asian-looking woman in a business suit was waiting. As soon as she saw Ari, she walked over. Sergeant Cole, I'm Karen Lee, your attorney. Ari shook her hand. Thank you for agreeing to help. It's my job, Karen said with a quick smile. She nodded to Diego, signaling she wanted a word alone with her client. I'll wait in the car, Diego said. Holler if you need me. When his friend stepped away, Karen gestured to a nearby bench. She took out a notepad. All right, from the top. Tell me everything that happened in detail. Ari drew a deep breath and began. I never meant to hurt her. I was furious, yes, but I would never hit her. I let go the moment I realized I was losing control. Karen nodded, taking careful notes. What next? She called 911 herself. Yes, Ari said. She was yelling that I was killing her. It was. He pressed his fingers to his temples to chase off the memory. It was insane. Calls to 911 are recorded, the attorney said. We will absolutely obtain that recording. From what you're saying, it might support your innocence. Did you say anything while she was on the call? Ari strained to remember. Yeah, I was shouting that she staged the whole thing, that I wasn't touching her. I don't know if the operator heard me. Karen made a note. Good. That matters. Then the police arrived, and they took you and understood. She flipped a page. Listen, this is tough, but not hopeless. First, there is no direct evidence against you besides your wife's statement and her minor injuries. I have already seen the medical intake. A bruised elbow, a scrape on the chin. Nothing serious. But she'll say I attacked her, Ari said darkly. And I'm a man, a trained soldier. They'll probably believe her. Karen tilted her head slightly, meeting his eyes. If you had truly beaten her, the injuries would be worse. So there's already doubt. But most important, you have a version of events, and it sounds credible to me. Your job is to help me find evidence to support it. I'll do whatever it takes, he said firmly. Here's what we need, she said, ticking through her notes. First, the 911 recording. I'll file a request to get a copy. That may take a few days, but we can have it before court. Court? Ari winced. There's going to be a trial? Yes, unless the charges are dropped. You're facing an assault, domestic violence. The prosecutor will likely want to move forward. These cases are taken seriously here, but we can try to convince them to decline if we gather enough exculpatory or mitigating material. Ari dragged his hands down his face. Yesterday he had been on duty, planning to spend the day off with his family, and today they were talking about court. Second, Karen continued, we need witnesses or statements that undermine her credibility. Your friend mentioned a neighbor your wife claimed had been there. Susan, Ari recalled. Maddie said the neighbor came over to wait for me, but I'm sure that's not true. Can you find out from this neighbor whether she was there? Ari realized he did not even know exactly where Susan lived. He had only seen her a couple of times on the street. I'll ask Diego, he said. He can go and check. Good. If it turns out your wife lied about the neighbor's presence, that is already a reason to doubt her account. Third, do you have a theory why she did this? You mentioned a lover, Brandon Gale. At the name, Ari's jaw clenched. Yes, she admitted they're having an affair, and I remember the guy. He's a developer, runs a business in town. Karen nodded. Motive out of jealousy and a desire to get a divorce is evident. In domestic violence cases during divorces, there's often what people call a silver bullet. One spouse fabricates abuse to gain leverage in court. Silver bullet, Ari asked. As in, one shot to hit every target. Get a favorable divorce, keep the kids, and discredit the husband. That's her exactly, Ari said grimly. Maddie wants Noah, the house, and probably money. Do you own the house jointly? Karen asked. Yes, half and half. The attorney jotted a quick note and said, Texas is a community property state, but if we can prove the husband's fault, the wife can ask for a larger share. Plus, primary custody almost always goes to the mother if the father is the aggressor. Ari felt a wave of nausea. If she wins, I'll lose my son, won't I? Karen paused for a beat, then answered plainly. There's a risk, which means we absolutely cannot lose, Sergeant. I understand, he said quietly, feeling a steely resolve boil up inside him. I'll fight to the end. Karen gave a small smile. Good. Now, next. We need to show she planned this in advance. Any little thing. You said she developed bruises very quickly. She might have prepared, say, filed her nails to leave scratches, or taken some kind of medication, Ari suggested, not fully sure. For example, Karen nodded. Sometimes people use sedatives to provoke a partner or make themselves more vulnerable. If only we knew whether she took anything. Ari shrugged. She didn't say. But there were some pills in the home medicine cabinet. I don't remember the name. Before I left, her doctor had prescribed her antidepressants. That's interesting, the attorney noted. If she struggled with depression or anxiety, that could affect how her testimony is weighed. We can request her medical records. That would be for court, though. And Ari massaged his temples, trying to recall. In the morning, when she was driving, she was sipping from a little bottle, maybe a painkiller or a calming pill. He wasn't even sure his memory hadn't invented it. Karen observed. If so, it's hard to confirm without access to her. But I can try to subpoena pharmacy records. Ari looked surprised. You can do that? If we show it matters, a judge can grant it, she explained. For instance, if she was taking something that can cause hallucinations or histrionic behavior, that would be extremely important to know. Ari rubbed his face. He didn't know whether his wife had been taking anything, but if she had, Karen would find out. Fourth, Karen went on. We need facts about her relationship with this Brandon. We need any proof of the connection, photos, messages, witnesses who saw them together. Understood, Ari nodded. I'll try to find it. You can't do it yourself. You've been ordered to stay away, Karen stopped him. Someone else will handle it. We could hire a private investigator, but your friend seems like a sharp guy. Diego, Ari clarified. Yes, he'd do anything for me. Ask whether he or the guys from base have seen her with anyone, the attorney said. In small towns, you know, nothing stays hidden. Maybe neighbors saw this man at your house while you were away. It would help to find someone who can confirm Brandon entered your lives before the incident. That shows motive. I'll find out, Ari said, his fist tightening. The traitorous image of Brandon smiling at his wife flashed before his eyes. He is not walking away from this. Karen gave him a hard look. Please, no vigilante justice. You know what happens, everything we're doing goes to waste. Ari looked away, flushing with shame that she had read his thoughts. Don't worry, I'm not stupid. Good, she closed her notebook. Last thing, your phone, do you have it? If you had, say, turned on the recorder before speaking to her, we'd have a trump card right now. But who could have known? Ari sighed. It had never crossed his mind that the woman he loved would set him up so cruelly. Still, Karen lifted a finger. Let's check your phone. Something might have saved by accident. Sometimes people hit record without meaning to. She motioned for the phone. Ari unlocked it and handed it over. Karen began to scroll through the recent files with practiced focus. He watched, a tiny ember of hope kindling in his chest that anything had been captured. There are a few videos from about a month ago, and here, a voice memo, she murmured, dated yesterday, starting around 10 in the morning. That's when it happened, Ari jolted. You recorded? Karen's eyes lit. I don't remember, he stammered. Maybe I called someone, but no. Suddenly, he remembered. That morning, when Maddie got out of the car at the preschool, his phone was vibrating on the seat. Maybe it started recording by accident. Or when he grabbed it with his cap, he might have tapped the voice memo icon. Maybe I did it without meaning to, he began. Doesn't matter how what matters is, we have it, Karen said, tapping play. A muffled rustle came through the speaker, then Maddie's voice angry, because you're almost a stranger to me now. Ari froze. It was a fragment of their fight, slightly indistinct, starting somewhere near the beginning, but audible. On the recording, Maddie shouted about her life, how she was exhausted. Then came their mutual accusations. The attorney listened without interrupting. The memo cut off at the moment Ari yelled, "Shut up!" And then there was a clatter, maybe the phone fell, or stop was hit during the struggle. Shame it doesn't have the end, Ari said bleakly. The most important part was there. It's fine, Karen touched his shoulder. What we do have is already valuable. There's talk of her infidelity, of her plans to divorce. She says she didn't expect you back. Indirectly, that supports motive. But there's nothing where she says outright she staged everything, he sighed. Not all at once, Karen's eyes gleamed with drive. I've seen plenty of cases where men were framed and there wasn't a single scrap of proof. Here, we'll have the 911 call and this argument recording. We're not walking in unarmed. For the first time in a day, Ari felt a flicker of hope. So you believe me? Karen sobered. My belief is nice. We need the jury or the judge to believe. She shifted back into business mode. Once we assemble all this, we can go two ways. We try to convince the DA to dismiss, or if not, we take it to trial and win there. Got it, he said. One more thing. In parallel, I expect your wife to file for divorce and try to grab full custody. So we need to be ready for family court too. That tracks, Ari admitted, head bowed. She talked about divorce. I handle custody matters as well, Karen noted. As soon as we get her petition, we'll file our response. Don't worry, we'll play offense. Ari nodded, though don't worry sounded like a joke. At last, Karen closed her notebook and stood. All right, let's split the tasks. You and your friend collect intel, point by point. The neighbor, other neighbors, co-workers, anyone who might know something about Maddie and this Gale. Also, any documents or photos. Maybe you'll find something at home, letters, receipts. Ari gave a rueful snort. I can't go home. There's the order. Oh, right, Karen agreed. Then maybe your friend or someone you trust who's not military could go with an officer if you need to pick up your things. And keep an eye out while they're there. I'll think about it, he decided. No one would do it better than Diego. In the meantime, I'll handle the requests. 911, medical records, maybe get warrants for her phone logs if we're lucky. I'll even try to pull phone bills to see how often she's calling this man. Thank you, Miss Lee, Ari said sincerely. I don't know what I'd do without you. Don't thank me, work, she smiled. The best thanks an attorney gets is a win. All right, keep me posted, she said, handing him a business card. Call anytime if you remember something or have questions. By the car, Diego flicked away his cigarette and straightened up. So, we good? Let's roll, Ari said, clapping his friend on the shoulder. We've got a lot to do. Diego didn't pry in front of the attorney. He just gave a playful salute. Copy that, Sergeant. When Karen drove off, the friends got into Diego's Jeep. He asked right away, What's the plan? War, Ari answered softly, buckling his seat belt. Karen laid it all out. We need proof Maddie's lying. Diego nodded. Just what I figured. Where do we start? Ari clenched his fists. His home rose in his mind, his fortress turned into a trap, and his wife, now an enemy. First, Susan. I want to hear from her own lips whether she was at my place yesterday. Okay, Diego said, firing up the engine. And then, Then we work the neighbors, anyone who saw Brandon near my house, Ari said firmly. If he was lurking, someone could have noticed. Hell yeah, Diego pressed the gas. We'll handle it, brother. The jeep shot forward. Ari leaned his head against the rest and closed his eyes for a second. He felt Diego thump his shoulder in a friendly, bracing way. We got this, man. They have no idea who they picked a fight with. 6 weeks later, Ari stood in the Bell County District Court in the city of Belton. He wore a press dress uniform with his ribbons. He'd been ordered to appear in uniform. He kept swallowing against the dryness in his throat. His heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo in the courtroom's stillness. Behind him sat Diego and a few fellow soldiers there to support him. Ari even spotted Captain Ford somewhere in the gallery. The commander had slipped out of a meeting to be there. That meant a lot. Command believed in him. At the prosecution's table sat the district attorney with his assistant, and their Maddie. She didn't look Ari's way. She wore a modest blouse, pale and subdued, the portrait of a sorrowful victim. To the right sat a panel of 6 jurors, 4 women and 2 men. They listened intently to the testimony of the police officer who had responded that day. We saw the defendant running out of the house with his hands up. The officer recited in a monotone under the DA's questioning. He complied with our commands. The alleged victim was seated in the doorway, crying, with visible injuries, some redness on the chin and a bruise on the left arm. The DA nodded. How did the defendant behave? He was agitated, shouting that he didn't touch her, the officer said crisply. But his face had scratch marks consistent with nail tracks, which are characteristic of defensive wounds. Ari felt Karen tense beside him. Those scratches were Maddie's work, but a jury could read them the other way. He kept his face carved from stone, just like Drill had taught him. When the DA finished, it was Karen's turn to cross-examine. Officer, did you observe any signs of a struggle? Broken furniture? Overturned items? The officer shrugged. No, the house was orderly. Just a kitchen chair knocked over. I see. Did the alleged victim require medical attention? She complained of arm pain, and we called an EMT. She declined transport. Did you see any weapon on the defendant when you arrived? No. Did he threaten anyone in your presence? No, he just kept repeating that he didn't do it. Thank you, officer. Karen smiled, then addressed the jurors, giving weight to the next question. Did the defendant appear frightened when you arrived? The DA objected immediately. Your Honor calls for speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase. Certainly, Karen nodded. Officer, how would you describe Mr. Cole's emotional state at the time of the arrest? The officer glanced at the prosecutor, then answered honestly. He seemed confused and stunned. Karen nodded gratefully. No further questions. The officer stepped down. Ari swallowed. Round 1 had gone all right. Karen had made the jurors hear. The house wasn't chaotic. The woman was barely hurt. Ari himself was shell-shocked. Next up was Maddie. Every muscle in Ari's body went taut. Maddie rose slowly and took the witness stand. She looked meek, a tissue clutched in her hand. The prosecutor began his direct. Please state your name. Me, Madeline Cole, she said softly. You are the wife of the defendant, Ari Cole. Yes, she sighed, touching the tissue to her nose, though there were no tears. Tell us what happened on July 15th of this year at your home. Maddie nodded, as if mustering herself. Ari barely choked back contempt. She was playing for the jury. That morning, she began, voice trembling. We argued. I told my husband I wanted a divorce. He lunged at me, grabbed my shoulders, shouted. She drew a ragged breath, and the DA laid a sympathetic hand on the back of her chair. It's all right. What happened next? I tried to pull away, Maddie went on, glancing sideways at the jurors. He hit me, shoved me. I fell to the floor and hurt my arm badly. I was terrified. She added a sob for drama. I thought he was going to finish me off, so I grabbed the phone and called 911. Had the defendant shown aggression toward you before? The prosecutor asked gently. Karen rose at once. Objection. The witness has never reported prior incidents. It's irrelevant. The judge considered. Objection sustained. The prosecutor didn't press it. All right. What was your husband doing while you were on with 911? He went outside, Maddie answered. Maybe he saw that the police were already arriving. Were you afraid? Very, she nodded, and this time one real tear slipped down her cheek. I feared for myself and for our son. Ari's jaw clenched. His eyes met Maddie's for an instant, full of pain. In hers was something like remorse, or did he imagine it? The prosecutor turned back to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. Cross, the judge said. Karen rose. Ari felt a surge of adrenaline sweep the room. Now the defense would strike back. Mrs. Cole, the attorney began, pacing a few steps forward. Would you say your marriage to the defendant was a happy one? Maddie narrowed her eyes. And no, lately there were problems. Problems? Karen echoed. Would those problems be that you wanted a divorce? Yes, I asked for a divorce, Maddie answered. When did you first tell your husband that? That day, she said firmly. You had never mentioned a split before. No, she shook her head. Were you involved with another man at that time? Karen asked bluntly. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The DAS sprang up. Objection, not relevant. Karen addressed the judge. Your Honor, we have reason to believe the witness has a personal stake and her testimony is biased by an extramarital relationship. That goes directly to motive to defame her husband. The judge thought it over, allowed for the limited purpose of exploring bias. Karen repeated, eyes fixed on Maddie. Were you in an intimate relationship with another man? Maddie grew nervous. The tissue fluttered in her hands. That's not true. Do you know a man named Brandon Gale? Maddie swallowed. I do. He's a builder, correct? Worked on your house. Yes, he did some work, but are you seeing him? No, she snapped. Karen looked down at her papers, then announced. The defense moves to admit Exhibit 3. The judge nodded, and the attorney held up a color photograph to the witness. Do you recognize these people? Maddie looked and faltered. Ari knew the picture. Diego, with a private investigator's help, had gotten it. The shot showed Maddie and Brandon, hand in hand, leaving a restaurant together a week earlier. Maddie stammered. Do you recognize yourself? Karen pressed. Yes, but... And the man beside you? That's Brandon Gale, is it not? Yes, she managed. Karen took back the photo. So you just lied under oath? You said you weren't seeing him. It's not what you think, Maddie blurted. He's just a friend. A friend holding your hand after dinner, the attorney said dryly. Is that how you usually are with friends? It was a momentary impulse. Maddie fussed with her hair. The jurors were already whispering, and the judge rapped for order. All right, let's set that aside, Karen said with feigned lightness. Back to the day in question. You say you told your husband you wanted a divorce, and he immediately attacked you. Yes, Maddie whispered. Did he punch you with a fist? No, he shoved me and grabbed me. By the throat. Maddie hesitated. And no, by the shoulders. Did he choke you? Cut off your air? No, she admitted. Did he kick you while you were on the floor? No. What caused the scrape on your chin? Maddie took a deep breath. When I fell, I hit the table leg. Understood, Karen nodded, pausing so the jurors could absorb it. Not a single blow from the defendant. So Sergeant Cole did not grab your throat, did not punch you. Correct. Well, he was very angry, he grabbed me, Maddie tried to recover. But you didn't tell the 911 operator. He's grabbing my shoulders, Karen's tone sharpened. You screamed, he's beating me, and he'll kill me. That wasn't true, was it? Maybe I exaggerated because I was panicking, Maddie trembled. Panic is understandable, the attorney drawled, glancing at the jurors. Yet, when the police arrived, you were intact and barely injured. Tell me, did your husband voluntarily go out to meet the officers? Yes, he ran out to them, Maddie answered softly. He didn't try to continue the conflict? No. After you fell and called the police, did he lay a hand on you again? Maddie squeezed her eyes shut, on the verge of breaking. No. Thank you. A few clarifications. The day before, on July 14th, you told your husband that neighbor Susan had visited, correct? Maddie jerked at the surprise. Yes, I said that. We heard testimony from Susan Miller, who stated she never set foot in your home that day. Why did you lie about the neighbor? Maddie opened her mouth, but Karen continued. Perhaps to hide someone else's presence? Mr. Gale's, maybe? No, Maddie nearly shouted, cornered. He wasn't there that day. He wasn't. But he had been in your home before, when Mr. Cole was away. The prosecutor leapt up again. Objection. The judge allowed an answer. Maddie snapped. Yes, he had. He fixed the roof and came to help with the garage door because my husband was gone. Her voice cracked into anger. So you invited Mr. Gale over while your husband was on duty. You understood that would be hurtful to your husband. Maddie turned pale. I didn't think about that. This isn't about the assault. I think it is, Karen shrugged. You wanted your husband out of the picture, didn't you? No, she exhaled, unconvincing. You wanted the house and custody of Noah, the attorney pressed. It would be easier if your husband had legal trouble, wouldn't it? That's not true, Maddie shrieked, losing control. I didn't want that. He deserved. She cut herself off, as if realizing she'd said too much. Silence fell, broken only by Maddie's frightened breathing. Karen repeated softly. He deserved it, you say. So maybe you decided to teach him a lesson, stage an attack so he'd deservedly lose everything. No, Maddie shook her head, seeing the trap close. Karen let the pause sit, then said evenly, no further questions. Maddie returned to her seat, utterly spent. Ari barely recognized in this shattered, humiliated woman the person he had married. He felt both pain and disgust. Somewhere deep inside, a miserable pity stirred, but he shoved it down. The doll looked grim. His star witness no longer looked like a flawless victim to the jury. To salvage the case, he called the final witness for the state Brandon Gale himself. Ari watched with interest as a short, stocky man in an expensive suit took the stand. Brandon avoided Ari's eyes. He swore to tell the truth, face set in stone. The prosecutor began. You know the Coles? Yes, Brandon answered curtly. I've known Maddie for a long time. I've built a few houses in their neighborhood. Were you at their house on July 15th? No, I was not, he said with confidence. And on July 14th? The doll prodded, anticipating Karen would ask anyway. Brandon swallowed, then answered. I was. I stopped by to see Maddie that evening. The jurors exchanged looks again. The doll proceeded carefully. For what purpose? To talk, Brandon snapped. You knew the defendant had just returned from a deployment. Yes, Maddie said he would be back that night. And you decided to leave once you learned that? Yes, I didn't want trouble, Brandon said, darting a look at Maddie, who sat with her head bowed. Judging that more questions might be dangerous, the prosecutor wrapped up quickly. No further questions. Karen stood for cross. Mr. Gale, what is your relationship with Madeline Cole? We're friends, he grunted. Friends, she nodded. Have you ever spent the night at the Cole residence? Objection, the dog groaned. Not relevant. The witness entered the home on July 14th, Karen persisted. I'm exploring the nature of his relationship with the party accusing my client. The judge allowed her to proceed. Brandon set his jaw. No, I have not. Have you ever expressed romantic interest in Maddie Cole? That's personal, Brandon muttered. Please answer, the judge reminded him. Yes, he forced out. I have. A buzz ran through the courtroom. Maddie lifted her face, cheeks blotched with shame and anger. Were you planning a future together? Karen pressed. Did you talk about how you'd live with Maddie after her divorce? Never in concrete terms, he shot back. Concrete or not, did you discuss it? Maybe it came up, Brandon said grudgingly. Karen stepped closer, voice low but clear. Did you know Maddie was going to accuse her husband of domestic violence? No, Brandon challenged her with his stare. I knew nothing like that. Did you encourage her in any way to do something to speed up the divorce? No, he growled. You didn't tell her. Whatever it takes, be with me. Objection. The prosecutor was on his feet again. Counsel is badgering the witness. The judge looked at Karen. Miss Lee, stick to facts. Understood, she sighed, then shifted. Do you love Madeline Cole? Brandon blinked, then scoffed. Excuse me, what does that have to do with anything? Your Honor, please, Karen turned to the bench. The witness is a potential accomplice, or at least someone with motive to remove the husband from the family. I'm establishing the depth of his emotional investment. The judge arched a brow, but allowed it. Brandon colored visibly. Well, I care about Maddie, but what does that prove? It proves you only want her, Karen finished. Yes, Brandon blurted, then bit his lip. Maddie shot to her feet. Brandon, stop talking, burst out of her. The jurors stared. The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Cole, control yourself. But Maddie had already stepped toward the stand, eyes blazing with rage and hurt. You promised it would all work out, she cried at Brandon. You promised I'd get the house and Noah and we'd be together, and now. Quiet, Brandon winced, suddenly afraid. Shut up, do you hear me? No, now everyone knows, Maddie sobbed, utterly losing it. You wanted this just as much as I did. A gasp rolled through the room. The prosecutor grabbed his head. The judge shot to his feet. Order, order. Two bailiffs hurried over and gently pulled Maddie back. She seemed to come to, looking around as if she didn't know where she was. I'm sorry, she whispered. Face flushed with anger, the judge addressed the jurors. Members of the jury, please disregard the outburst. Your verdict must be based solely on evidence given under oath. He called a recess. Ari sagged into his seat, wiping sweat from his brow. He caught Diego's gaze, and the gallery Diego gave both thumbs up. It looked like victory was close. An hour later, the parties delivered their closing arguments. The prosecutor tried to save the case, urging the jurors that a bit of infidelity doesn't mean there wasn't an assault. It rang hollow. When Karen rose, she spoke calmly and clearly. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the picture is simple. My client was dragged into a lie. His wife, having taken up with another man, decided to get rid of her husband and chose the most dishonorable way, accusing him of a crime he did not commit. You yourselves heard her slip and reveal her intent. You heard how her friend wants the husband out of Madeline Cole's life. This was a scheme. Yes, Sergeant Cole made a mistake. He took the bait, he got angry. But anger is not a crime. He did not beat anyone, did not choke anyone. If he had, the victim would not be sitting here so comfortably. She'd be in a hospital. Sergeant Cole is not an aggressor. He is a decent man, a soldier who served honorably and was absent only because he was fulfilling his duty to his country. And here is his reward. Stripped of his home, his son, and his good name. You can set this right. I ask you to return a verdict of not guilty because there is no other just outcome. Karen's summation pierced Ari to the core. He looked at the jurors. He saw sympathy on several faces. He saw one woman on the panel give the slightest nod. The jurors retired to deliberate. Ari sat clutching the little medallion Noah had given him before deployment. He murmured a prayer in his head, though he hadn't been religious in a long time. After 40 long minutes, the jurors returned. Ari's heart felt like it would burst through his ribs. He glanced at Karen. She smiled faintly, as if reading the room. Have you reached a verdict? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, said the foreperson, a stern-looking older woman. "Announce it." She stood and read, "In the matter of the state of Texas versus Ari Cole, on the charge of aggravated assault, we find the defendant." The pause before the last word tore him apart. "Not guilty." A low roar swept the room. Ari exhaled and realized he hadn't been breathing. He closed his eyes, feeling them grow damp. The liberating words, "not guilty," slammed into his chest, lifting an enormous weight. The judge thanked the jurors and adjourned court. Ari stood, the world tilted. Diego grabbed him in a bear hug from behind, nearly lifting him off the floor. "Told you, brother, that's how it should be." A couple of soldiers from his platoon clapped softly. Captain Ford gave him a respectful nod. Ari nodded back in gratitude. Maddie stood off to the side as if struck dumb. Brandon hustled out without looking at her. She took a step toward Ari, then froze when their eyes met. In her eyes churned a whole storm: shame, anger, ruin, relief. Ari didn't know, and he no longer tried to. Whatever they'd had was over. He turned to Karen. "Thank you, you saved my life." "I saved justice," she corrected with a warm smile. "Now go hug your son. I'm sure he's been waiting." Ari felt a tender joy wrap around his heart. Noah, he'd be able to see him. "We'll win custody, too, don't worry," Karen added. "After this circus, family court is very likely to keep Noah with you at least equally, if not more." "Equal is fine," Ari said quickly, casting one last look at the stunned Maddie. "I never wanted to take him from her. I just want to be a father to my boy." "That's the right answer," Karen said, smiling again. They stepped into the hallway. With every step, Ari felt lighter. Diego bumped his shoulder, joking. "You fought like a champ, Sergeant. Proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," Ari said seriously, hugging his friend tight. "Thank you, brother." "Anytime," Diego sniffed, hiding his emotion. "Now let's go see the kid." The judge lifted the temporary restraining order. Ari nodded. Outside the courthouse, he squinted into the bright sun. A strange calm filled his chest. He drew a deep breath of hot Texas air. Freedom. "Ari," a small voice piped up. On the plaza stood a familiar figure, Susan, the neighbor. She was holding little Noah's hand. Ari's eyes flew wide. "Noah." The boy saw his dad and burst into a run. "Daddy." A heartbeat later, his son was in his arms. Ari scooped him up, tossed him lightly, and hugged him tighter than he'd ever hugged anyone. "Noah, my boy." He buried his face in his son's curly hair, hiding the tears in his eyes. "You came for me, Daddy," Noah chirped, arms locked around his neck. "You promised." "Yes, buddy, I came," Ari whispered, holding him like the most precious treasure on earth. His voice shook, but with happy tears. "I will always come for you. Always." He glanced around and saw Maddie emerge from the courthouse. She stopped off to the side, watching. Ari didn't know what she felt now, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. He looked back into his son's eyes. "Well, Noah ready to go home?" "To our home?" the boy asked. Ari nodded. "Yes, to ours." Noah squeezed his neck even tighter. Ari started toward the car where Diego was waiting, carrying his child in his arms. At the vehicle, Ari looked up at the sky one more time and exhaled, as if releasing the last scraps of tension. He kissed his son's cheek and said, with no anger or bitterness left, only a quiet hope, "It's going to be all right, Noah. Dad's here. It's going to be all right." Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out, because this is nothing compared to what's next. If you are under 18, do not even think about clicking next.